Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is The Enthusiasm Project Season 7, Episode 5, and today is all about Q and A. So we're just going to jump into that as quickly as we can. It's been really fun to sort of set aside one dedicated episode per season to questions and answers. I'm always happy to include feedback and comments and questions and stuff in any episode. So, anytime you send those in, more than happy to include them. But it's really cool sometimes to just have an entire episode dedicated, set aside specifically for that. And I have quite an assortment of different questions. I have a handful of messages from SpeakPipe, which is how you submit stuff through the homepage of my website. Homepage is still a term, right? Is that outdated? You go to himynameistom.com, and on the front page there's the SpeakPipe thing where you can just submit stuff. And that is super easy. So I definitely encourage people to use that. If you want to submit something and you don't want to have to produce anything or spend a bunch of time, you can just record with your built-in microphone if you want, or you can use, some fancy setup if you have that too. So I have several of those messages. I've got stuff from Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, and I think even a Twitter message or two. So that's what we'll dive into. Before that, I am, just in case you're wondering, I am using the Rodecaster Pro 2, again, which I guess is pretty much a given from this point on. And I am using the Shure SM7B because last week when I listened back to last week's episode, I just really like the way that it sounded. As I've gotten older, I've always liked the SM7B. It is just kind of a mic that I come back to a lot. But through the SM7B setting on the Rodecaster Pro 2, I just thought it sounded really amazing. The other reason I bring that up, though, is because I am running beta firmware, which I'll be talking about through some of the questions that are going to pop up. I just installed it this morning, which may have been a mistake to install new firmware before using a thing, but I'm using beta firmware. I think it's 1.0.6, which adds some super cool new features. And so far, the beta stuff has worked really well for me. If you Google Rodecaster Pro beta program, it's totally free to sign up. You just need to give them the serial number of your Rodecaster, and then you can just install beta firmware as they release it. Of course, it's beta, so you beta believe that there might be issues that pop up. So far, knock on wood, I haven't had any crazy issues popping up with beta firmware, but every time a new thing comes out, you never really know. So I bring that up in case something super weird goes on throughout this episode, or you hear something strange. It might be because of that, but hopefully it shouldn't, and we should all just forget that there was beta firmware at all. So let's jump into questions. I've tried to make sure everything technically is working this morning, so I'm going to start with the SpeakPipe messages because they're the ones that I have to play media from, and yeah, so we'll start there. First message is from Keith, and take it away, Keith. As soon as it loads, take it away anytime. Maybe I should refresh that page. Boy, this is one of those things that a professional podcaster would edit out. Anyway, good thing you're listening to my show. Okay, Keith, what do you have to say?
Hi, Tom. This is Keith Lancaster. I've been watching your videos and listening to your podcast for a little while now and am really a fan. I just listened to the Forced to Shift Gears podcast, and I thought, maybe Tom would benefit from reading a book that I just read called 4,000 Weeks. You can look it up on Amazon. It's Time Management for Mortals is what the subtitle is, but it doesn't really cover what this thing really is. It's kind of an amazing book. So again, it's called 4,000 Weeks. I thought it might help you. I just recently semi-retired from teaching after teaching for 13 or 14 years, frankly, from burnout, because I was trying to do too much. I was doing that. I was trying to run a company for a good number of years. During that period, I was finishing my PhD, and I kind of burned out. And this book has really been beneficial, and my whole family's reading it. So anyway, I thought I might recommend it, and if you like it, I hope it will help you. I may be banned from listening to you in the future, however, because I have just bought an ATEM Mini ISO Extreme and a Stream Deck and a Rode Podcaster Pro 2 because of you. Anyway, bye.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Sorry for tell your wallet. I'm sorry, I guess. But hopefully you're getting good use out of all that really cool stuff. I appreciate the message very much. Congratulations on everything, all the hard work, all the accomplishments, PhD, absolute ridiculous amount of work that goes into something like that. And completely understandable that you'd be feeling a huge sense of burnout after doing that for years and years and years on end. So congratulations on the accomplishments. And I hope that you're also able to, get some rest and peace of mind. And I'm glad to know that the book 4,000 Weeks is helping. I am in the middle of reading that book right now. So it's super cool that you left that message. I actually started a while ago and then got distracted by finishing The Expanse. But now that I'm done with that, coming back to 4,000 Weeks. And what you said is exactly right. It reminds me so much of when you make a YouTube video that you're like, this video is really good, but I don't know how to condense it into like a title and a thumbnail. The book is 4,000 Weeks, like Time Management for Mortals, which kind of makes it sound like a productivity book. And I guess you could say that it's that, but it is so much more than that. And I think that was just like the title and the way they had to frame it, like with the publisher to make people want to buy it. But at least so far, I'm only about halfway through it, so I don't know if it takes a turn in the last half. It is really amazing. I definitely got burnt out on a lot of things, but one of them being like productivity videos and podcasts and things. A couple of years ago, maybe like 5 years ago, I started getting really into that because it was really helpful at the time. And this is what helped me learn that sometimes, stuff that is helpful to you at one point in time, including my own content that I make, might not be helpful to you at a different point in time. And that's totally okay to evolve and change and move on with what you need. But there was a time when stuff like related to productivity and minimalism and all these things was really something I needed. And it made like a tangible benefit on my life. And as time went on, I noticed that I stopped feeling those effects and I started feeling almost bad about myself because it was like every time I would watch a video related to productivity, it just made me feel like, wow, I'm sure not optimizing my life in every way possible. And I'm failing at this and I'm not good enough at that. And it was like, well, maybe I don't need to be, journaling every day while practicing a physical thing every day, while doing this work thing, while doing this strategy over here and that strategy. And it's like, I don't have time to just be a person. This book, 4,000 Weeks, is basically the opposite of that, because essentially the premise is 4,000 weeks is about how much time you have on Earth. How do you really want to use that? And it breaks it down not so much in like, here's how you can be as productive as possible, but it's almost like this is why you can feel okay saying no to stuff. This is why you can feel okay when you don't want to do something. This is why it's okay to put stuff off of your plate. And you make a decision to do one thing, that means you can't do other things. It's okay. Like you can't do everything. You'll never be able to do everything. So don't try to do everything is sort of where it goes from. And it's really well done. It's an easy read. Like it's not super heady that you have to stop and think about every chapter after you're done. And it's been a nice way to like end the day reading, going to bed. So definitely recommend that book as well. And hope you're enjoying all the super cool stuff, Keith. Our next message is from Stefan. So let's see what Stefan has to say.
Hi, Tom. This is Stefan from Germany. I was wondering, do you too have the problem with the Rode Procaster, too, that you too have to set the time every time again when you boot the device? Kind of annoying, right? Maybe it's just a bug in the current firmware 1.0.2. 2, right? Whatever. Bye.
There's Rode's amazing naming conventions. Both of the messages I've played so far have had trouble remembering the Rodecaster Pro because, of course, the Rode Procaster is a separate and completely different thing. So, yeah, that is always tricky. I wanted to include this message because I know there are a number of people listening who have or will have the Rodecaster Pro 2, and this is a good common thing that touches on a few things. So, the clock being set. No, I'm not having that problem currently, but I was having it before the release when I was using the beta firmware, like when I was making all the pre-release videos and stuff. The clock was it was always like 1 or 2 hours fast or slow. I would set it, and then, the next day I would turn it on, the clock would be too fast. And I told Rode about that, and they're like, yeah, it's an issue, we know. When the official firmware came out, it fixed the problem for me, and I haven't had the problem since. And I don't have the problem even now on beta firmware. But if you're having the issue, it is got to be an official firmware. So that means it's still a problem, and you're not the only person I've heard bring this up. So the reason that I thought it was good to include this is there are these weird little bugs. When they pop up, it's definitely a good idea if you want to burn the extra calories to get in touch with Rode and just let them know. They're probably aware of it, but every little bit helps, and they might even have a quick solution for you too. But another thing that's really helpful when you find something weird like that is going into the settings and just resetting the device by itself. If you save all of your settings as a show, especially if you do it through like the Rode Central app, then you don't necessarily risk losing everything if you've made presets and all that kind of stuff. And then resetting the device usually kicks out some of those weird bugs because the clock thing should be fixed by now. And I've just found that it's like, since the device is pretty new, every time new official firmware comes out, it seems like it's a good idea to just reset everything to just help it work its absolute best. And I'm sure that'll change as time goes on and things become more optimized. But that is kind of my pro tip, is if you're having a weird issue with the Rodecaster, try just resetting it, and it might really change everything. If you go into the settings, mine is recording right now, so I don't want to touch it and do that. But if you go into the settings and like the system info, device info, that's where you'll find the option to reset it. And our last SpeakPipe message for today comes from somebody with pretty much one of, if not the coolest name I've ever heard. And this is from Kane Treble.
Hi, Tom. My name is Kane, and I'm hailing all the way from Australia, so g'day, mate. Similar to yourself, I never really thought of myself as a Rode fanboy, but as I sit here now, speaking into my Rode pod mic mounted onto the PSA 1 Plus and feeding into a Rodecaster Pro 2, I can't help but see a pattern emerge. All this was accumulated in bits and pieces over years, each piece replacing an inferior predecessor, each replacement somehow being part of the Rode family. Regardless of any of that, though, I just have fun playing around with all this stuff, and I'm not even actually doing that much with it at the moment. But in the few free moments that I have to jump on, play around, it just brings a smile to my face. I always keep that enthusiasm about, because I know that's what's going to help me grow and develop as a person. And even though the last couple of weeks haven't been that great for you, I hope you always keep that passion and enthusiasm as well. In those times where I'm too busy to do the things I want to be doing, being able to listen to other people in that same kind of boat gives me the same energy. So thanks right now for inspiring me to keep being as creative as I am and to keep pushing forward to try new things, because you never know what's down the road. Oh, God, it's contagious. Which actually brings me to my final point. How come you've never finished your podcast with the phrase, "The buck stops here"? Thanks, mate. See ya.
Oh boy, that's one of my favorite messages ever. So thank you, Kane, from someone with the coolest name ever. There's a lot to unpack there. So yes, the punchline, buck stops here. If I ever ran for public office, which I wouldn't, I feel like that would have to be part of the campaign slogan. But I was really proud in our online community that Heather and I have. It's called Just Create More. You can go to justcreatemore.com if you want to, check it out. It's for committed, active YouTubers, not YouTubers who should be committed. Very different. But anyway, in that, there was a period of time last year where twice I sort of like took a bunch of old gear that I didn't need anymore. Some stuff that had been sent for videos, stuff I just accumulated. And I just wanted to find good homes for it. And so I put it all up. I created a little online store, but I wasn't trying to sell it. I was just trying to give it to a good home. And but I had to list things with a price. So I listed everything as $1, and I called the store the Buck Stop. And I was really, really proud of that. Probably more proud than I should have been. But more important than that, Kane, I think I don't want to get in trouble if I don't touch on this point, but you talked basically about projecting enthusiasm for stuff and the fun of things and having fun with things. And you even mentioned, even if you're not using your gear for serious productions on a regular basis right now, the fact that you can go in, poke around, have some fun, and just enjoy yourself, that's hugely valuable and really important, and definitely something I appreciate the reminder to keep in mind as time goes on and things get weird and you can have negative things happen to you, but remembering that this should be fun and it's kind of cool and you can be goofy with it, that is really important. And just being excited about the stuff, like last week's episode was about the, the negative comments and things. And I was happy with that episode because I wanted to wait to talk about that until I had some practical stuff I could offer, like practical takeaways. And that was cool. And I felt great about that. But let me tell you, Heather was listening to the episode after it came out. And when I heard her listening to it, I was like, oh man, that audio quality is so good. And it just made me like so excited because, there was no extra processing or anything that had to be put into it. I was like, wow, just straight out of the Rodecaster without a signal booster or anything. It sounds so good. And I just sort of like geeked out on how great that sounded. And that was really fun. That kind of stuff is fun. Half of the reason that a lot of my videos will have a second camera set up. So there's the main camera, there's a camera off to the side, which I know some people don't like, some people do like. But a thing I like is it's really fun to set up a camera. Like it's really fun to, I'm going to get this camera and put on a lens and play with some settings and try to figure out a little angle over here. Like that is fun. Playing with the stuff is fun. Using it is fun. And that's, I don't know, the fact that we can all do that and share stuff is really, really cool. I like that we also have the same road to road, you might say, where we didn't realize how it happened and it just sort of happens over time. And they make good stuff. I was actually talking to somebody from another very well-known microphone company who makes microphones that I really, really do like. And we were talking about Rode. And one of the things they were saying is they're like, yeah, we're going to release some new stuff, but we don't know how to get the fandom that Rode has. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty crazy. And he was like, no, you don't understand. In the audio world, Rode can release XLR microphone clips and people lose their mind and post pictures of them on social media and stuff. And I was like, yeah, Rode has done a very good job of connecting with consumers, even if consumers aren't always happy with everything, whether that's justified or not. But Rode has done a really good job of that and hitting that, I think they make good stuff. I mean, they make good stuff, right? It's high quality, it's reasonably priced, and it lasts a long time. But it's also what I have found personally is it's stuff that kind of elevates me a little bit. I'll buy, when I got the first Rodecaster or even my first video mic, it's like, this is the best thing I can buy right now, but it's also kind of a little bit beyond my skill set and my needs right now. So it's going to kind of encourage me to grow into it. And I think that's really, really cool. There's not a lot of tools you find in your life that kind of help you grow into them and build your skill set because you use them. And I think Rode does a really great job of that. So thank you to everyone who sent in SpeakPipe messages. I'm just calling them SpeakPipe because that's the app that I use to do that. If you want to send in an audio clip, just go to himynameistom.com anytime, submit a message, and I can include it in any episode, even if it's not an official Q&A episode. Let's jump over to Patreon real quick. There were a couple questions I wasn't going to answer here because it was more specific, but I tried to reply to them. But there is a question from Phil on Patreon that I wanted to include here, which just says, hi, Tom, when you're recording your videos, are you recording to the card on the camera, to the computer through eCam, or directly into iMovie or some combination? If I'm using multiple cameras eventually, would I need to record on all of them? My question is generating an answer. Looking forward to your expert answer. So I think Phil was starting to get some clarification as he was asking the question. But this is a question that I do get a lot because I talk about eCam a lot. And people ask, are you just recording directly into eCam? My answer is I don't. But here's why. It's not that you can't, it's just that I don't. Heather, her entire workflow is built around eCam, whether it's streaming or pre-recorded video. She has not taken the SD card out of her camera or even pushed the record button on her camera in a year and a half. It's just permanently in place, and she just uses eCam for everything. But she also has a 1080 workflow. I have a 4K workflow, and because I use the ATEM Mini, as wonderful as it is, one of its limitations is that it's limited to 1080. So even though eCam does support 4K, the ATEM doesn't. So my 4K camera going into the 1080 switcher then puts a 1080 signal into eCam, and that's a big reason why. It was more of an issue when I was shooting on Canon because my Canon cameras had the 30-minute record limit. And so I always kind of wanted to use eCam because it's a great way to get around that recording limit. Your limit is just your hard drive space and battery power, basically, or wall power. But moving over to Sony, the recording limit's not an issue. anymore. And then I could run through like the Cam Link into Ecamm, or even get like a Cam Link Pro and put it in an external housing and then have 4 inputs, but I just haven't done that. So I record to the SD cards on all of my cameras. Even if I have like 3 or 4 cameras going, I'm just recording to 3 or 4 SD cards. And then I take all that footage and import it and then sync it all up. There's ways you can sync things up automatically. I even have a few videos on how to do that in Final Cut Pro, and you can do multi-cam cuts, which is really, really fun. But I'm usually I say too lazy to do that, but it's more work to not do it. I'm just in the habit of not doing that. So I usually just line everything up manually, all the audio tracks, all the video tracks, and then just cut between them from there. And everything is in full glorious 4K resolution. And that's just my workflow. It's not necessarily the best or the most efficient. It's just the one that I have and the one that I'm used to. So I hope that answers your question, Phil. Now we've got another question. This one's from Twitter. This is from Mr. Patrick Boberg, who is the composer of the theme song to this very podcast, even though it was originally for the ska podcast, a different one. So Patrick is, he's been, he and I even did an episode together for the ska podcast. So you could check that out. Patrick is great. He's like one of my favorite people. He sent in a video, but this is an audio only version today. So I'm going to be seeing Patrick's beautiful face and you'll just be hearing his beautiful voice. I'm just going to warn you, the first half of this video was more of like a message to me about a stream that Heather and I did about our couples table stream. So I'm jumping in about halfway through. If it sounds like I'm cutting Patrick off or something, I just jumped into the part where he asked the question for the episode. So here is Patrick.
Again, I wanted to ask you, unrelated, easy question. What are some YouTube channels that you follow that have absolutely nothing to do with your niche? Like I'm thinking, was it like Crazy Hydraulic Press or How Ridiculous or Colin Furs? Just things that are fun or interesting. I don't know. Maybe you're one of those people who likes to watch one of those YouTube channels where all they do is, take out blackheads. Please don't be one of those people. I might be a little concerned. But either way, I got to drive. It's really hot in this car from being so humid all day, and I don't want to sweat on camera. Hope things in California are looking up, and your next video is awesome. Oh, I'll be on vacation next week, so don't expect a timely, stupid comment from me, or serious comment, or heartfelt comment. But, yep, there's my cue. Hope for an A. Bye.
Thank you, Patrick. I always look forward to all of your stupid, heartfelt comments. I appreciate that. I hope you have a great trip next week. No worries for missing my brilliant video, which video is next week? Oh, it's going to be a fun one. This week, I guess, when you're listening to this, it's going to be a fun one. But to answer Patrick's question, so I went through my YouTube subscription box, which I think I have like 400 channels that I'm subscribed to, and I try to like unsubscribe if something isn't relevant to me anymore, or the channel hasn't posted in 3 years or something. But the ones that are still there are ones that I want to stay subscribed to. So I put together a list of some of them that are unrelated to anything else, that I do here. And this is in no particular order, and it is not a comprehensive list. So it's just sort of the ones that jumped out at me right now. The first one that jumped out, I guess because it was alphabetical order, is Abroad in Japan, which is such a really fun channel. Chris Broad, who runs that channel, he went to Japan like 8 to 10 years ago to originally teach English in Japan. So he started as a teacher. He has like that experience and then left that and has been basically covering Japan through YouTube for a long time. He's a really cool guy, a really talented filmmaker, just really funny. His videos are amazing. He just recently, he had like a little office studio thing that looked really nice, but he just had it, this was probably like 7 months ago now, but he had it completely redone and rebuilt into like it's almost like a Neo Tokyo Blade Runner kind of like city street ramen shop. It's really cool. Like it's probably one of the coolest and most detailed YouTube studios that's ever been made. So Abroad in Japan, very, very, very fun. Another thing that jumped to mind was I like a lot of scale modeling channels. No blackhead removal or pimple popping, sorry, but I know those are things. But scale modeling is my thing. Luke Towan, he's from Australia. He's one of my favorite like scale modeling channels. He's a really cool guy. I love it because Luke's channel, he's well over 1 million subscribers now. His videos I've been following for like 5 or 6 years. They've always been amazing quality. The detail that he puts into his scale models is absurd. And he can even like take photos and do stuff where it really looks like a real photo of a thing. It's pretty impressive. And Luke himself, I believe, is like a commercial pilot. I think that's his day job. And so even with a 7-figure YouTube channel, you know, he just has his day job. He has a really great Patreon where he's more than happy to, you know, talk and interact. Just seems like a really nice, normal guy despite huge channel success. So that's one of my favorites. And speaking of flying, I've been getting really into aviation channels for a while because I'm interested in getting my private pilot's license. Heather and I went on a discovery flight a few weeks ago, and it's something that I want to do. And so I've been watching a lot of those channels. There's one called 7-4 Gear, which is great because Kelsey, who runs that channel, is a commercial 747 pilot. And so his insights and perspectives are really interesting. He also has a series where he breaks down like bad advice given from TikToks, which I guess is a thing on TikTok. People will make videos about like how to really survive a plane crash or what the airlines don't want you to know. And it's all like absurd stuff that's either untrue or will get you killed. And so he debunks those and explains why in a really matter-of-fact, down-to-earth way. No pun intended, because he's flying in the sky, so down to earth. But yes, that's a great one. And then there's also, I'm forgetting the name, Stevie Triesenberg. She's super cool. She's like a software developer, but also got her pilot's license at a really young age, has her own little plane, which is this awesome Beechcraft Bonanza, like V-tail plane. It's very, very cool. And she has some amazing flying videos where I think she moved from somewhere in the Midwest to California, and it took several days of flying. So she did this really cool multi-part series documenting like going that whole journey and the different stops you have to make, because a small plane, you can't, I just heard a weird click. I think that might have been a beta firmware thing, unless it was only in my headphones. Anyway, on a small plane like that, you can't just go like around the world on one tank of gas. You have to stop repeatedly and all that kind of stuff. I've also been watching a lot of music channels. Some that popped to mind right away were Alex Melton. He's an amazing musician, and he has a lot of videos that are like, if Blink-182 wrote this one song, or you know, I think he has one that's like, if Blink-182 wrote 1 Week by Bare Naked Ladies. And it's like, he's so good at emulating the playing styles, vocal styles of specific musicians. And, you know, he'll take pop songs and like make them country songs or vice versa. Like, it's really, really fun. And he's incredibly talented. And I think within the last year or so, he's moved to full-time YouTube. So it's really cool to see him have a bunch of success. Another great music channel is called 5 Watt World, which has a ton of really cool documentaries about like specific instruments, sometimes artists and stuff. But I love the series that's on, like, it'll be a whole thing about like the precision bass or the Telecaster or whatever. Just the whole history of a specific instrument model is really fun. Mary Spender is a really great music channel. She's a musician, but primarily a guitarist. She just did a video that followed the whole process of having a custom guitar made, from like literally them taking hunks of wood and cutting them to having the finished guitar, which is cool. Rick Beato is another great music channel. He's like not infamous, that's bad. He's like a legendary music producer guy, and he has a great series about like what makes this song great. And you can find any song, even if it's from a band or somebody you don't like, and he breaks down everything. Like, he has the isolated instrument tracks for every song, and so he'll go like, this is what the bass is doing here, and see how it plays with the guitar, and then there's this harmony here. And it really, even for like a simple song like What's My Age Again from Blink-182, it will make you hear the song in an entirely different way. So I've been watching a lot of those. I like video essay / commentary channels, as long as they're not cruel. One that I've been binging a lot, or a couple that I've been binging a lot lately, one of them is from Mooncat, who is somebody who has an amazing music production background. So her videos are always like really well produced. And what I always find is interesting is, even though it seems like they're filmed in the same room, the same space, she kind of sets up like a different feel or a different like set for every video. And that's really, really fun. She doesn't her videos are long and like really in depth and take a lot of research. So she doesn't post too often, maybe once a month, once every 2 months, but it's like every video kind of has its own universe to it. She just did one recently. It's a 2-hour video on the manosphere, which I thought was just a goofy word that she made up. And it turns out, no, it's like the world of, I don't know if you'd call it toxic masculinity or something like that. And it is frightening, but the video is also incredibly well done. She's got some amazing videos that kind of dive into topics like that with a very, very cool point of view. Last night, well, lately I've been watching a lot of, but last night specifically, I binged a whole bunch of Scott Kramer's videos. He's just an amazingly funny, clever commentary reaction channel, but he's really high effort and his stuff looks really, really good and sounds really good. And he's just like an absolutely hilarious person. There's some of those people that it doesn't even matter what they're talking about. If they just say anything, it's like the way they say it is funny. Scott Kramer is one of those people. Plus, I noticed recently he's been using a Samson Q9U, which sounds great in his videos. And I always wonder, I wonder if he saw my review of that. That would be cool. And then the other one that popped up was Gaming Historian. So that's he has some really cool in-depth stuff on like Super Mario World, the release of the Nintendo, the original Nintendo or the Super Nintendo. Just really cool documentaries about gaming history and stuff like that that dives into some really interesting stuff. Like, I guess when the Super Nintendo was being developed, or I guess it was the Super Famicom in Japan, the original Nintendo was still selling really strong in the US, and so Nintendo didn't want to say like, hey, we're going to do a new system right here, because that hadn't happened yet. The idea of buying a gaming system and then upgrading after a few years wasn't something people were used to yet. And so Nintendo was trying to kind of keep it on the DL that they were developing a new thing. And for the most part, like, even though they could literally release it and sell it in Japan, North America would just not know, because it was, the early 90s. And so there were like, he goes into this whole thing about how there's, there were magazines that were kind of like, I think there's this thing available in Japan, and people writing letters and exchanging stuff. But it's so crazy. Like, there's a whole hugely successful product, like taking over the popularity of a country. And then this other country is just like, I don't know if that exists or not, because there wasn't the internet the way that we know it now. Whereas now you would just go on YouTube, type in whatever console, and someone from anywhere in the world that has it can tell you all the rumors, all the details, all the specs, show you the unboxing, the whole thing. And it's just crazy that that's not how that worked back then. So those are some of the channels that jumped out at me as I was scrolling through my like history and subscription feed. Definitely check them out. It's super fun, especially if you're somebody who makes stuff on YouTube, to make sure that you keep watching YouTube as a fan. And sometimes to do that, the best thing to do is to watch things that are not related to what you make, like totally different stuff. And it's really, really fun. So thanks again, Patrick, for that question. So now we're going to move on to Instagram, where I posted, a story where you ask questions? Yes, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. We're going to jump into some of these. Actually, I think more than I've ever gotten. Some of them will take long answers, and some of them will take short answers, and we'll just go through all of them. First one from Quickety Jacks, someone I definitely don't know, asks, where's Poochie? And I don't know, but I agree that when Poochie's not on screen, all the other characters should be asking, where's Poochie? Although I do think he had to go back to his home planet. Okay, up next, Photo Bebop 86. How important is it to be on various social media platforms for content creators for a living? That's a great question that I hear people talk about a lot. I don't have the definitive answer, but I can share my insights. I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed by feeling like you need to be on everything. So say you make YouTube videos. Hypothetically, imagine somebody makes YouTube videos. You might feel like, okay, that's what I want to do, but I also need to be making Instagram reels, and I also need to be on TikTok, and I also need to have a Twitter, and I need to make a Discord, and I need to do a Facebook group, and I need the possibilities are really endless when it comes to all the different things to do. I think that it's important to explore and experiment and figure out what works. Like Twitter made no sense to me until like 2 or 3 years ago. I just didn't understand how to even really use it or find anything on it or enjoy it. And it took a while to sort of figure that out. It's like, oh, okay. And then not only figure out how the platform works, but how you want to use it. So it's like, you probably don't want to just take one piece of content and just put that exact same thing everywhere, because that's probably not going to yield the best results or be the best use of your time. But finding ways to do things. So I don't know, speaking for me personally, that's what I can share, I guess, is what I know. YouTube is my favorite. That's my main thing, right? So that's where all the main stuff that I spend the most amount of time on goes to YouTube. Twitter is also really fun. Twitter is a great way for me to connect with other people more directly, whether they're friends or companies or whoever. Like, Twitter is such an easy way to have sort of personal connections. And once you start following specific topics or people, it kind of feels like you get to just sort of go. It's like an ongoing conversation, but in a way that's less confusing to me than Discord is. And so that's kind of, Twitter's sort of the more casual thing where I will personally, share stuff I work on, maybe share some more personal sides of things. Instagram for me is kind of similar. I definitely use Instagram for promotion more, like, hey, here's a new YouTube video. This is what it's about. Definitely check that out. But Instagram stories, I think I've been having a lot more fun with lately. I always forget that it's a thing you can do, but it's a really cool way to make something without overthinking it, for me at least, where it's like, oh, I want to share this idea or this thing, boop, boop, done. It's like super easy. Reels, I really just haven't participated or made any. It's just not really my thing. And the same kind of goes then for TikTok. Like, I'm not at all. It's just not my thing. Totally get it why some people love it. Totally get why some people love making it. It's just not the kind of stuff that I enjoy watching or making. So it's not for me. But it's important to, to figure that out for yourself, because you might find yourself like, while TikTok might not be my thing, you might sign up, log in, watch stuff, make stuff, and it just might click with you in a way that's like really, really fun, and that you see a lot of, I don't know, success, I guess, for lack of a better term, or, it helps you out in a way that just clicks sort of differently. Like, I've known people who have really tried to make YouTube channels and they just feel like they're banging their head against a wall, and they switch over and do an audio podcast and it takes off right away. Sometimes you just kind of need to, you need to experiment to see what works and doesn't work. Don't be afraid to decide that something doesn't work, and then you never know what you find that does work. And also, if you make a decision, like you like or don't like something, don't forget that down the line, 6 months, a year, whatever, maybe revisit it. See what has changed. See if your experience or the platform or whatever has changed. I think that's a good thing to do. Next one comes from Bailey Stone, who's been on the podcast many times, probably listened to more of this podcast than anyone on planet Earth at this point. Bailey asks, what did you think of the Blackmagic Ursa broadcast that you used a few months ago? That's a great question. I borrowed a Blackmagic Ursa from B&H Photo for a little over a month, and I was kind of planning to sort of make a video about it, but then we just got really busy with other stuff, and the Rodecaster stuff was happening, so I didn't make a video about it, but I just got to use it and play with it for a while, and it was a really cool camera. I wanted to see what Blackmagic offered that wasn't like the pocket cinema cameras, which is the only thing I was familiar with. The crazy thing about the Ursa is, and Jared, if you're listening to this, I know you have an Ursa now, although I don't think it's the broadcast you have but the crazy thing is just how much you get for the price. So the Ursa, the one I had, the Broadcast G2, I think is a $4,000 camera, which is not cheap, but my Sony FX3 is $3,800. So it's basically the same price as the camera that I use. It comes with a PL mount, which is more of like a cinema lens kind of mount, broadcasty thing. And it also comes with a Canon EF mount that is literally 4 screws or something, and then you just switch it out. So I just put the EF mount on it and then put Canon lenses on it, and you're good to go. The camera, the image quality is amazing. When you use the Canon mount, it gives you 6K, full 6K. It's a crop sensor, but it gives you the full crop readout, which I guess is still cropped. But it gives you the full 6K instead of 4K that you would normally get with the other lenses. It's built really well. It has a ton of cool features. It's really, really modeled after traditional ENG style broadcast cameras, which traditionally go for, at the cheapest are like $8,000 brand new and go up to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for the camera body. And you get a lot of that functionality in this $4,000 camera, which you can then upgrade. You can add on, crazy viewfinder and all this stuff, but which you could bring it up to like a $7,000 to $10,000 camera, which is still considering what you're getting, it's worth it. It's not a practical camera for my like workflow, so it's not like I'm going to be replacing any of my cameras with it, but it's a really fun camera, and I definitely want to like take advantage of B&H's loaner program more for things like that, where it's like, I know I'm not going to buy a Panasonic camera, but I'd really love to check one out and just play with it, and or whatever, like things that I know I'm not going to buy, but I want to check out, and I don't want to do something shady like buy it and return it or something. Up next, the GOV says, how do you connect an XLR microphone like the Sennheiser MKH50 directly to your Sony camera like the A7 III? I just want one audio file. That is a very good question. There's a few ways to do this. You could always run it through like an XLR interface and run the outputs of the interface into the camera. The easiest way to do it is to get, I forget the exact model number. It's the Sony KM something or other. If you look for like Sony XLR camera interface thing, it's basically like the FX3 has the top handle with the audio part on it. It's basically just that audio part that goes into the hot shoe on the camera. You don't have to connect any other cables or anything. It works on I know it works on the A7S III, the A7 IV, and I'm 90% sure it works on the A7 III as well. And then you have two XLR inputs plus an additional 3.5 millimeter input. It's got great preamps, so you can run like the Sennheiser MKH50 is a condenser, so it's got phantom power. You don't need anything else. But you could, if you were using like the SM7B that I have right now, you could even run like a FET head or something into it and boost the levels if you want. And a really cool thing that Peter Lindgren showed me when he was here is that those Sony audio interfaces like the FX3, the one, it's like the K1 something, K5, I don't know, it sounds like a mountain, like one of the big mountains that you have to climb in the world. That's what I always think of. That, and then also the little like Sony video mic, the ECM BM1, which is out of stock everywhere until March of next year, unfortunately. They have really cool manual audio controls, but they actually have a really good automatic audio control. So what you can do is you can flip it to auto and then put the input gain to -10 and basically maybe -20 if you're a super loud person. But at -10, you'll pretty much always have perfect audio levels and you'll never clip. Even if you get really loud all of a sudden, it won't clip. Peter showed me how to do that on the FX3, and it has definitely improved the quality of the audio in my videos since then. So anyway, that's my answer, I guess. Dan C. Bearded asks, which definitely go check out Dan C. Bearded's channel. He's amazing. Other than marrying Heather, is going full-time the best decision you made? For you specifically, Dan, I'm going to say yes. Yes, it is. The reason I say that is because Dan is a former high school teacher as well. Wait, high school or middle school? Former teacher, secondary teacher, also coach, who just this past academic year left to do YouTube full-time. He was doing the same thing I did, where he had a channel that he was basically 2 full-time jobs. Plus he has kids, and it's a whole thing. So, and Dan's channel is just really, really good. And it's been hugely successful, and now he can dedicate more time to it. And so I feel like I know why you're answering this question, Dan. And my answer is yes, because going all the way back to that's just the cool name is just stuck in my head. Going back to Keith, another cool K name. Keith's voice submission a while ago, about 4,000 weeks. You are really limited in the amount of time that you have on planet Earth. No matter how much time it is, it's just not enough, and it's very limited. And so anything that you can do that puts you in more control of your time and lets you spend more of your time doing something that you're enjoying and having fun with is a really good thing. And for most of us, our jobs and our careers are the things that take up most of our time. And if you have a job or a career that is draining and exhausting and frustrating, even if it has rewarding parts like teaching, but you can take that energy and spend more of it feeling good and positive and happy and being creative and growing in new ways. I think it's very important to take advantage of those opportunities and to embrace that. And, the doors aren't always closed. Like, I don't think anything would happen, Dan, where you would have to go back to teaching. But worst case scenario, I mean, you're an amazing teacher and there's a teacher shortage. So worst case scenario, it's not like you couldn't land on your feet in some way. So yes, going full-time is, other than marrying Heather, the best decision I've ever made. I'll say that confidently. Up next, we got Filmtopia. Ricky from Filmtopia. Could you review the top 3 to 5 XLR/3.5 millimeter handheld interview wireless microphones? Basically, high quality plus low interference handheld wireless mics for street interviews. This is a great question, and I'm glad you asked because I have my perfect answer for this. I don't know of a ton of 3.5 millimeter handheld microphones, so I feel like you're pretty much going into XLR territory if you want quality. And there are certain microphones. I know Sennheiser and Shure make wireless mics that have wireless things built into them, and you can put the wireless unit on your camera. But I think in general, you're probably going to be attaching a wireless unit to the XLR microphone. In the past, I've always used Sennheisers. Like in my old jobs and stuff, we use the Sennheiser G2 and G3, which I think they're up to, I don't know, G4, G5 or something at this point. But it's a little packet. The kids always thought it was a vape because that's what it looks like when like just the XLR wireless thing was sitting on my desk. They're like, yo, Mr. Buck, did you take a vape from someone? And I'm like, yo, this is a wireless unit for a microphone. So that's what I always used. And they're not inexpensive, but they're really high quality and super reliable. And that's what you'll see a lot of times on like TV news crews and stuff. So you take that and you plug it into basically any XLR microphone. The microphone, I mean, you can't go wrong with anything that's designed to be a handheld mic. So the Shure SM58 is the one that immediately comes to mind because that's the most familiar probably. But you could also go on a more budget route with like the Samson Q2U. But the one that I'm really excited to tell you about is the Rode Reporter, because I finally got one myself. I've been wanting it forever, but I don't really have a need for it. But I just really want it. It's a very long microphone. It's like, I think it's over 12 inches long, over a foot long. And it's like a tall, skinny microphone. So if you plug the wireless unit on, it's even taller and skinnier. But it's a great interview. It's called the Reporter because it's made for that. It has a 10-year warranty. It's awesome. And the reason that it's really cool, other than that it's just really well built and fun to use, is it's omnidirectional in a really effective way. So you will typically see somebody, when they do an interview, they point the microphone at their mouth and they reach over and they point at the person who's talking and they kind of go back and forth, and that works really well. And you can do that with the Rode Reporter. But what's really cool too is you can also, like, literally, if it's just kind of in between you and somebody else, it's going to pick up your voices really well. And it's not terribly expensive either. I think it's like $120. It's an awesome mic. The confusing thing though is it's like one of the few Rode microphones that's made in China and not in Australia, which is confusing to me because I thought Rode made all of their mics in Australia, but not the Reporter. But it's a really good microphone. It's super fun. It's just a fun mic to use, and it's cool because it's so long and skinny. It makes it easier to interview and move towards people because you don't have to like stretch your arm and be all in an awkward position while they're talking. Lucas Engstrom asks, what's your average listening time for your episodes? Any way to see this? I think that's a great question. And my answer is I don't know. And so initially I thought, well, if I don't know, maybe I shouldn't answer the question because, that makes sense. But right now, even looking at like my Buzzsprout statistics, I can see download stats, but I can't see specific listening time per episode. There's might be a way to do that. I know the reason I brought this up, even though I don't know, is because I think sometimes, so like on YouTube, for example, you can get so granular with everything. At what frame did somebody get fed up with the video and decide to leave? You can like dial it in almost that specifically. And I think there's probably ways to do things like that with podcasting. But it's so tricky because I think a lot of times with podcasts, say the average podcast is like an hour long. There are people who try out a new podcast, they listen to the first 5 minutes or something, and it might not be for them. And then there are the people who go all the way to an hour, and there's not a ton of people, I don't think, that are kind of in the middle. Like, I invested 36 minutes into this, and then I'm not going to listen anymore. Maybe, I'm sure that happens, but I think it's kind of like, it's sort of an all or nothing thing. What I would look at with podcasts is less about like listening time. Really focus, like, because the thing with podcasting is your numbers are probably going to be so much smaller than something like YouTube, but the quality of those numbers is massive. Like the quality of the listeners, it's just so high that I think that's something to really focus on. So if you notice that more people are listening, that's probably a really good sign. I know you probably want to know, like, are they tuning out after 15 minutes or what? I don't really know how to do that, but a way you can kind of test it is you can do calls to action. You know, like, hey, send me a message about this, let me know about this, or whatever, and do that at the end of the episode or in the middle of the episode. And then you can kind of see, like, you can even just say, like, I want to know how many people made it this far. Send an email if you listen to this part of the episode, and then just see if you get messages from people and like, oh, okay. Or if nobody says anything. Not that would be wildly accurate data to work with, but at least you might kind of get an idea. But focusing on your numbers is your download numbers is important. If you remember, I've talked about this before, maybe you've heard it. If your podcast gets 28 downloads within the first 7 days of an episode, you're already in the top 50%, top half of all podcasts. I forget the exact numbers because it's been a while, but I think it was if you get more than 300 in the first week, you're in the top 10%. So very different than other numbers. And then you go to the top like 0.0001%, the big ones where it's, they're getting millions and millions or hundreds of thousands of downloads every week, every episode. That's not most of us. Most of us who are making a podcast are getting, a lot of people well under 100 downloads per episode, maybe a couple hundred, maybe into 1,000. I don't think I've ever, in the 119 episodes and 3.5 years I've been doing this, I don't think I've ever had an episode get 1,000 downloads. Just looking quickly, the highest number I'm seeing. Oh no, I did. The season 5 finale. That was 1,075. That's got to be the highest one. So yeah, there's typically my episodes get, this is actually number, I'm pretty happy with this. It seems like they're typically getting somewhere between 500 and 700 downloads per week, which is kind of awesome because last time I was really paying attention to that, it was like more of a double digits, not triple digits. So that's cool. Very, very interesting. I learned something from your question, so thank you. All right. Francisco Cruz. We're going to cruise into this question here. What's your favorite camera setup at the moment? Well, Francisco, I still think the EOS R is an amazing camera. So if you got that, just getting a good lens or another good lens is the way to go. But I was just thinking about this morning. My 3 Sony cameras, the FX3, A7S3, A7 IV. I like, other than just for fun, I cannot think of a reason now or in the foreseeable future why I would need another camera. Like, it feels so weird to just be so satisfied with something. Maybe something new could come out, but they just do the job really, really well. And they each have their own strengths and their own weaknesses. I'm constantly torn between the A7S3 and the FX3 because they're so similar but so different. But I love them all, and I use them all for different things. So all of my Sony cameras are great. I think for video focused stuff, the FX3 just takes the edge a little bit because I do like the form factor, and I was able to get a Tilta cage for it that has like a hand grip on the side. So it's really cool because even without like a shoulder strap or something, if you're out with the camera, you have this really strong hand grip, just almost like an old camcorder on the side. And that's really cool. I absolutely love my 24 millimeter 1.4 lens. That's my go-to lens. My 85 millimeter, I wish I hadn't waited as long as I did to get a good 85 millimeter lens. I have the Zeiss Batis, but there's tons of 85 millimeter lenses out there, and I think they're all great. So I bet if you don't have an 85 millimeter lens, might be worth checking that out, I think. Josh Allen asks, is the Rodecaster 2 worth the upgrade if you have the original? Great question. I've talked about this a little bit before, but because the Rodecaster 2 is out now and more people have it, I think it's worth addressing. For me, yes. Okay, actually here, this is perfect. I made a video a few weeks ago when Peter was here about the DJI Ronin RS3 gimbal. And the title of the video is like, is it really worth the upgrade? I have the original Ronin. Here's this one from several years later. Is it worth the upgrade? And my conclusion at the end of the video was no. For me, it's absolutely not worth the upgrade, even though it's objectively a better gimbal in every way. For the way I use it and what I need, no, the current one I have is fine. But for Peter, he was like, I can't use the original anymore for what I need and the things, how I need to use it. I need the features that this one has. And that was really important because it became less about the thing and more about the person and how they're using it. And the Rodecaster is exactly the same. The new one is better. Of course, it should be, right? If it came out 4 years later almost and it was not better in every way, that would be a failure. But it doesn't make the old one bad. What I have been telling people is that if the old one is letting you down in some way, then it might be worth thinking about the upgrade. So depending on how it's letting you down, if the noisy headphone preamps are bothering you a lot, then it might be worth the upgrade. If you want to connect instruments directly to it, it might be worth the upgrade. If you want to have a lot more control over mix minus and more USB connections for computers and things, might be worth the upgrade. If the original is doing everything that you need and you've got a setup that's working great, sounding great, you're having fun using it, totally no need to upgrade. Like you're absolutely golden with what you've got. A big thing that I talked about in a recent video, or maybe the video's not out quite yet. But a big thing that I think it might be this week's video. I should know this, but I have a video that's using the SM7B into the Rodecaster 2 without a cloud lifter or without a FET head or a booster. And then I compare it to what it sounds like with the booster because Rode said that it's going to be noisier if you use a booster with it. And it actually is. This is quieter at 58 decibels of gain with no booster than at 26 decibels of gain with the booster. And then I tried out the FET head, the cloud lifter, the Clark Technic, and the Coda Stealth. So I tested all these different boosters to kind of get different results with the Rodecaster Pro 2. But the point I made in that video was the fact that you don't need a booster. If you have one microphone and you already have a booster, it's a non-issue. But if you're trying to put together like a multi-mic setup, if you're trying to do 4 SM7Bs or something, or dynamic microphones that need boosters, potentially just in boosters alone, that's another $300 to $400 you'll spend just to get the audio levels that you want. Whereas the Rodecaster Pro 2, you don't need the boosters at all. You shouldn't not even that you don't need them. Don't use them because it will degrade the sound quality. So that could potentially save you from needing to spend $300 or $400 more dollars on boosters. So depending on the workflow, like that could be huge. If someone's just starting out, they want a 4-person setup and they want to use microphones that would traditionally need a booster, the 2 is definitely the way to go over the 1. But if you have the 1 and it's working out for you, mine is just sitting right over here. And I think it's going to be incorporated into a future setup redo that Heather and I do for the couples table. So the 1 is still a wildly capable thing. And if it's working great for you, it's not going to stop doing that anytime soon. But that is a great question. And, the 2 is really, really nice. All right. Marcus Lindblad asks, what's a dream brand you'd love to work with? A dream brand? Well, I would love to work with Rode. So like officially, I mean, we have a great relationship, and obviously they sent me my Rodecaster and they've given me some mics and stuff over the years, but it would be fun to do actual real content with Rode. That would be really, really cool. In like a more official capacity, I guess. Other brands, I don't really have dream brand. I guess like rather than naming a specific brand, it would be something. Okay, so I know people who work with other big brands, not necessarily in areas that I am in, so I'm not going to be working with these brands, but they'll be like, okay, we have a new product coming out. Here's the product because you need to make videos about it. We have a decent budget, so here's a very decent amount of money. Sometimes it's like between $7,000 and $25,000, and just go make a video and have fun with it. They might say like, oh, here, don't forget to mention like these key upgraded features or whatever. But there's very little like control over the over the video the person makes. They go out and make the video, and then usually, if someone's paying you $25,000 to make a video, you'll probably need to send it to them. But they pretty much never have any editorial feedback. It's like, yeah, this is great. They just kind of want to make sure the video exists and it's ready to go. And that's it. So that kind of thing, more brands need to take that approach because they're finding creators that they like. They're supporting the creator financially, and they're trusting the creator to do the things that to make the stuff that people like, that the person's good at. It never makes sense to me when a brand finds somebody where it's like, okay, we like what you do. Would you want to make a video for us? It needs to be exactly like this. Use this. They're just like scripting or storyboarding out an entire video for someone. It's like, no, let the person do the thing that they do. Typically, when that happens, it's usually either the brand is inexperienced at working with more independent creators, or they just want access to the audience. They don't want your creativity. They want your viewers, which is not great. So I would love to, if I were to work with brands in the future, more brands in the future, it would be those kinds of situations where it's like, and everyone I've worked with so far, like Artlist, I know that's a service, not a concrete product, but they're like totally into just supporting ideas that I have and letting me have fun with it and doing it however I want to do it. And it's great. So more of that kind of thing from other brands would be awesome. All right. I have another question from Mr. Boberg. This was an important one. It was, what's your answer to the trolley problem? And I had to look this up. Not the answer, but just what the trolley problem was. It's something I think we're all familiar with because it's a very common trope. But basically, if I could sum it up, the trolley problem, I think it originated around like the 1960s. It's basically, okay, a train is going down a track. There are 5 people tied to the track. So it's going to hit them and kill those 5 people. There's one person on another track. You can pull a lever and make the train switch and go to the one person instead of the 5 people. What do you do? And of course, everybody's impulse is to look at ways around this. Like, okay, well, who are the people? Are the 5 people like really old? Is it 5 serial killers and like one astrophysicist? Or like, is that guy a murderer and they're all preschool teachers? Like, who are these people? Are they old? Are they young? Okay, could I replace myself with the one person and then make the train go to the one person and I'll sacrifice myself? Like all those things. And the answer to the question, or the dilemma to the problem, is no. You can't change anything. Somebody has to die. Is it going to be 5 people or one person? For the sake of the experiment, we'll say that they're all, I don't want to say equally as valuable, but they're all like the same age. They're all decent people. There's nobody that like deserves to die or anything like that. So you have to figure this out. And the automatic impulse that I think a lot of people have, which is my ultimate answer, is yes, I will pull the lever and kill the one person instead of the 5 people. The reason, though, I like skimmed through a little bit. I didn't want to read into like the answers because I just wanted to have my answer, my reasoning. But what was interesting, and I guess why it became difficult, because my first impulse was, yeah, I don't want anyone to have to die, but if you have to choose 1 versus 5, it makes a lot more sense to do 1 instead of 5. But the thing is, this train is barreling down a track and it's going to hit these 5 people. That's happening. By you pulling the lever, now you have decided that this one other person is going to die. Like, those 5 people would have died before, but you're not involved with that. You're not responsible for that. The blood's not on your hands. Now you've pulled this lever, deciding that the other person is going to die, and now that person's death is your responsibility because you took action. And I think that's where, if you want to have like a really high-level philosophical debate about ethics and morality, that's kind of where it, the person, even though they're saving 5 people, goes from not being a murderer to being a murderer, if in a weird way. But my thought is, obviously, that's a no-win scenario, despite what Captain Kirk might think. And even though you could take no action, so this is already happening. If I do nothing, what's going to happen is going to happen, and nobody's blood is on my hands. I do feel like the fact that you could take action and you don't does make it your responsibility. If you're unaware of it, if you're sitting over in California and this train's in New York and you don't know it exists and this thing is happening, it's not your responsibility. But if you're standing right there and which I guess is the scenario of the question, you could pull the lever and put the train down the other track. Inaction is action, I guess. So taking action to harm the least amount of people, I just guess, is the thing to do. So I hope we're still friends, Patrick, after that answer. Ryan McLaren asks, where do you find the motivation to get up off the couch and actually make videos? This is such a good question, and it's very different for everyone. Heather and I, we live together. We think alike and work alike in so many ways, but we're also so different in so many ways. And we have learned that certain things that work for one of us very well does not work for the other at all. So this is a very individual response. For me, what has helped is just making it a non-negotiable. I've talked about scheduling videos in advance. That definitely helps add wiggle room into your schedule, because sometimes you're just not in the headspace, or you're not feeling well, or whatever it might be, and you just can't make something that day. But sometimes it's like, okay, by the end of this week, I need to have this new thing finished. If that means I do it today, if that means I do it tomorrow, if that means I spend 5 days on it, whatever, by the end of this week, it needs to be done, and that's non-negotiable. And that just, I guess that's how I approach it. What I have noticed, though, which is strange, is I have more time to work on projects now because this is my full-time job. But in a weird way, it was almost easier to kick myself into gear when I was working, even though I would come home from working all day, or it'd be a Saturday after a long week, and that's when I'd have to record or make something, which was physically exhausting, but it was like there was no other option. It was, if I want to make this, I have to do it right now, and that's the only time I can do it, so I'm going to do it. Whereas if you're like, well, I could do it anytime in the next few days, it's a little easier to move things around, so to speak. So that's kind of a strange thing, but I don't know what it is about me or my upbringing or whatever it might be, but I don't think this is an innate thing. I think it is something that I learned, is setting a goal or setting a requirement or something for myself and making that an actual rule, even though there is no actual consequence for breaking it. Like if I say I have to finish this project by the end of the week, I don't have a boss that's going to be saying like, you're fired if you don't. But I just set it as the goal, and it is the goal, and I just sort of act as if like it is an unchangeable law of the universe. And a big thing too, maybe more practical answer to that, is once you get started, it becomes so much easier. So, if you're sitting on the couch and you're tired and you think of the whole process of like, oh my God, I have to set everything up and I have to make the thing. It's so overwhelming. But once you just get started, once you just get up and you walk in and you turn on a light, fire up the computer or whatever, once you're 5 minutes into it, it's like cleaning the house, then it becomes easier. Like cleaning your house might seem like a big job, but once you wipe down a counter, take out the trash, it's like, oh, it wasn't so bad. Maybe I should vacuum. Maybe I should mop. Maybe I should clean up this. And it's like, once you get going, it's much easier to keep that momentum. It's just getting going is the hard part. Gino Santa Barbara, love your videos. Can you show us how to connect OBS to the Rodecaster Pro 2? Yes, because you should. Once the Rodecaster is connected, you can just select it as a source in OBS. You can select Rodecaster Pro 2 main, Rodecaster Pro 2 chat, or you can plug in USB 2 and select secondary. And with the beta firmware that I have, and which will be in the next official firmware release, this is why I was really excited for this question. You have complete control over USB mix minus on all of the USB channels. So currently with the initial firmware, you only have mix minus on the chat channel. You can turn it on or off on the secondary channel. It's always on the Bluetooth channel, and it's never on the main channel. With the new firmware, you basically have this little page of options for every one of the channels, all 3 USBs and the Bluetooth channel, where you can decide what you want to include in mix minus on that channel. And that's really, really cool. It gives you so much flexibility on everything. I guess the reason that's relevant to your question is currently, if you're running the original firmware, you can select Rodecaster Pro 2 main, but if you're using something where you're talking to someone else, use chat so that way you don't have echo. But with the upcoming update or any of the beta firmware that's out now, you can use any of the USB channels because you can customize the mix minus output. So that's the question there. I'm going to save this last one, or I'm going to save one till the end here. Sean Curtis asks, is your Rodecaster Pro hooked up to your cameras? It is possible, and the new one does have, you can do like line level output, which gives you a better quality signal to run into something like a camera or an ATEM. You just need a Y cable that has 2 1/4-inch jacks on one end, a left and a right, and then a stereo 3.5 millimeter on the other. Still, the Rodecaster is so good, and the preamps are so good, and the sound quality is so great that personally, I don't want to run that into another lower quality preamp. Even an amazing camera like the FX3, even an awesome tool like the ATEM Mini, The preamps inside of that, the Rodecaster is an audio device. It's supposed to make good audio. A camera is supposed to do so many other things. An ATEM is supposed to do so many other things. So the preamps just aren't at that same level. So I always feel like if I'm running that into a camera, I'm kind of degrading the audio quality because I'm running a really high quality thing into a lower quality preamp. So I always like recording either directly into the Rodecaster. Usually if I'm using it in a video, that's what I'm doing. I'm just recording there and then syncing the files in Final Cut, or connecting like my ATEM and the Rodecaster to separate USBs and then selecting those in Ecamm or OBS or whatever software it might be. Daddy Toxic 69 asks, "Hi Tom, I love my MV7 but hate the handling noises. Should I upgrade to the SM7B?" It depends on how much you hate the handling noise, because the MV7 is a wonderful mic. Sound quality is very close to the SM7B, but one of the often overlooked huge benefits to the SM7B is how well it handles noise. So right now, my sound's probably changing, but I'm moving the mic all around on my boom arm. And we're not really, I guess if I really hit the boom arm, you can probably hear that. But right now, I'm grabbing the microphone and moving the microphone around. And I don't think you can hear anything other than maybe my voice changing because it's going off axis. But I'm like twisting and shaking and moving the microphone all over the place. I guess if I really hit it, you could hear that. It rejects noise like crazy. It rejects handling noise like crazy. And it makes it really easy to use because anytime you accidentally bump it or you need to move it while you're recording, it's not an issue that you need to worry about. So if the handling noise is just a small inconvenience that you're just like, kind of annoyed with the MV7 on that, don't worry about it. If it's something that drives you crazy or that is like degrading the quality of what you're making, or you've had to like edit out handling noise, if it's really impeding your workflow or your experience, you will definitely notice a difference with the SM7B. And the SM7B is better at rejecting plosives and stuff like that. It's just such a good microphone. Like it really deserves the reputation that it has. It's just so freaking good. Okay, WP Sinhala asks, "What color profile do you use when recording YouTube videos?" I like this one because lots of people have different things. My workflow is I use picture profile off, which on the camera is hilariously represented as PP off. And so it's like the default picture profile with the Sony cameras. And then I made a preset in Final Cut Pro, which doesn't do much. It just changes the exposure a little bit and adds some saturation. And I just add that to the clips, and that's it. I did even make that preset free, so you can go to himynameistom.com/downloads, and you can download it there for Final Cut if you want. It is designed for my specific like lighting conditions in my studio and stuff, so I don't know how well it's going to work on other people's stuff, but if you wanted to try it out, you could do that there, but it's default picture profile. Tom Hoppins asks, "Have you had a chance to check out the DJI mic wireless system?" I have not. I was really close to buying it because I feel like they lowered the price on it. When it was first announced, it seemed too expensive to me. It was like, it's more expensive than the wireless Go and all that stuff, but it's cheaper than like the Sennheiser G4s, but not by much. And to me, it was in this weird place of like, it's too expensive to be the consumer grade thing, but it's not professional enough to be like the Sennheiser. And I think they might have lowered the price, or I just saw the wrong price. Now I think it's like $300 or something. Seems pretty fair for what you get. Everything I've seen from it, everything I've heard about it, people really, really seem to love it. Although I haven't heard a lot of female creators talking about it, because guess who DJI didn't send it out to? So that's also kind of a reason why personally I haven't bought any new DJI products in a while, even though I could definitely use a new drone at this point. Or that mic system I'd like to see them branch out to more diverse creators, as we've talked about before. Canman1104 asks, "What camera would you recommend for a beginner video podcaster?" My go-to, like the cheapest camera I will recommend, let's put it this way, is the Sony ZV-E10. And they're finally coming back in stock. They had to like discontinue production for a while because of the chip shortage, and now they're coming back in stock. The ZV-E10 is an amazing camera. It's very fairly priced. It's not the cheapest camera you're going to find, so it's like $700 to $800 depending on if you get a lens with it or not. But you take that camera, you pair it with a Sigma 16mm 1.4 lens, and you're going to have such a good looking setup that's going to look great for podcasts. But even the kit lens that comes with the ZV-E10, I forget what the focal range is. it's a wider focal range, but a smaller aperture. Even that lens is really good. And if you need a podcast where the camera's like filming a wide shot of two people or something, it could work really, really well for that. And the cool thing with that camera is, in addition to just being great for video, great for streaming, great for photos, it's small, it's portable. You won't outgrow it. Like, even if you were to down the line want to get something like the A7S III or the FX3, you'll still have a place for the ZVE10 as like a B camera or your out and about camera or something like that. So I think it's a really good investment for those reasons. It's a great camera. And Doc Rock, when are you coming to Hawaii? Okay, dope. See you soon. I've only been to Hawaii once. It was in 2007. I got to go snorkeling on Christmas Eve because the weather was so beautiful. We stayed on Kauai the whole time. I would absolutely love to go again, and I would love to hang out with you in Hawaii, Doc. Gil asks, Gil, who's been almost as often as Bailey on the podcast, I think, who do you look up to and why? Well, aside from you, Gil, there's a lot of people I look up to. YouTube creator in the YouTube space, I always think of people like Marquez Brownlee, who've been doing it for a very long time. They've managed to stay true to themselves and keep, even though they've grown and they've adapted and they've evolved, if you look at the person and the kind of like thing that they communicate and the vibe, I guess, for lack of a better word, it's never changed. Like, that level of authenticity is still there. So I always admire that in like the YouTube space. Probably the Aquabats have had the biggest impact on me in my life overall, which is my favorite band, and they're currently on tour right now. So go check them out. Because like it's such a thing of doing things your own way, having a lot of fun with it, doing things a little differently, knowing that you're going to be criticized for that, and then doing it anyway. And being creative and being positive. And in their, oh my God, they started, 1994? So in their nearly 30-year journey as a band at this point, lots of ups and downs, lots of setbacks and pitfalls. And they're on tour right now. Like, they were going to play a show tonight, the day I'm recording this. That's cool. And that is really motivating and inspiring me. And to do that, and not to just do that, but to, again, be creative with it, have fun with it, and do it your own way for that long is absolutely amazing and inspiring in just a ton of ways. So that's that. And then last question here is Danielle Harper 406, or Daniel Harper. What's your favorite food? That's an important question. So, favorite food. I haven't eaten meat for 4 years, which is super easy to do now because of like Beyond and Impossible and all the cool options. But I still always kind of come back to like hamburgers and sandwiches as favorite food. And that's probably like my go-to. Like, In-N-Out is my favorite restaurant. I can just get a grilled cheese there now. It's great. But the reason I'm excited for this question is, I guess this could be my favorite food, but it's not something I can have often or regularly at all. But it is, I can tell you the story of the best thing I've ever eaten in my entire life. And it was in April when Heather and I went to New York, which was supposed to be for the Roadcaster Pro. That was why we went to New York. And then they had to cancel their event for, I don't know what reason. I think somebody might have gotten sick or something. And they were like, we already booked these tickets. They're non-refundable. Do you want the tickets? Okay, cool. So they still let us keep the plane tickets. And that's why we ended up going to New York in April, which ended up just being a few days of just having fun in New York. While we were in New York, there was a day where I was very hangry. We had been walking around. I was tired. It was windy. It was rainy. I was just like, not into anything. And Heather was like, there's a place I want to go. It's called Ippudo Ramen. And she's like, this place is always super crowded, but if we go early, it won't be. So we went, they close at like 3 to 5 p.m. and then they reopen for dinner. So we went at like 2 o'clock, 2:30, like right kind of before they were closing for the afternoon. There was nobody there. There was no line. It was a super cool looking place, but it was nice that there was nobody there. We sat down. I was like, this is not sounding good to me right now. Like, I don't want this, but I'm not going to, that's how I was feeling. But of course I'm like, Heather's been here before. This was on her list of things we want to do while we're here. I want to make sure we do this. Okay, I'm sure it's going to be fine. So she orders like a vegetarian ramen, which was absolutely amazing, super delicious. But there were these little things called veggie buns. And it's like if you ever had a pork bun, it's like that, but these were like fried eggplant. All it is like a really good bun with a piece of fried eggplant, a little piece of like iceberg lettuce, and some kind of sauce. That's it. It's the simplest thing in the world. It just sounded good. It sounded small, like it wasn't going to hurt my stomach or anything, because as I get older, every food apparently like decides to hurt my stomach or make me feel bad. So these seemed like pretty inoffensive. And we asked the waitress, like, how big are those? She's like, oh, they're just these little buns. Like, you get 2 of them, 3 of them, whatever. It's like, okay, she really undersold them. So the ramen came out. Wow, this is really good ramen, sipping that. Then the buns came out, the veggie buns. I grabbed one, took a bite into it, and my entire life changed. Like I immediately told Heather, like, you need to eat this right now. It's the best thing I've ever tasted. I couldn't believe how good it was. Like the whole time we were there, I just couldn't believe how good it was. We talked about it the entire rest of the day. And then the next day, I was like, okay, that was really good. But I was also hungry and kind of cranky. So maybe anything would have, like, you give me an old piece of cardboard or something, and I'd be like, wow, this is so tasty right now. And I think there's an Ippudo, there's several of them in New York. There's like one in Los Angeles, which is, it's not close enough for us to go to like regularly or anything. So I was like, okay, we're in New York. I'm not going to get the chance to try this again. So the next night, I was like, I want to Postmates to our hotel because we were so tired from walking. I was like, I want to Postmates more of those veggie buns. So we just had the same meal again the next night, and I got more of the buns. So this time, though, the first time we were at the restaurant and it was, fresh from the kitchen. Here's the thing. This time was on a bike messenger in the rain from Midtown to the Upper West Side. So I don't know how many blocks that is, 15 blocks, something like that, 20 blocks. It was, I don't want to say it wasn't fresh. It was not as fresh as we had it the day before, and it had been in the rain and it's cold, whatever. So I got the thing, opened it up. I was like, this is going to be a real test if these are good or not, or if this was just a one-time thing. I'm not kidding when I say that I took a bite and I started crying. I've never had this reaction. It was like an anime where someone eats a food and they just start flooding tears. That's what happened in real life, and I didn't know that was a thing that happened to people. I just couldn't contain it. It was so good. I think it was like the second bite I started tearing up, and Heather was like, oh my God, are you crying? And I was like, I think I'm crying. And then it was literally like gushing tears. It wasn't like, oh, I teared up, I cried. I think Heather took a video. I don't know if she posted like a story of it or something, or if she put a clip in a vlog. But I was like, you would have thought something was wrong if you walked in and saw me like, oh my God, are you okay? Because I was bawling, crying, just because these were so good. Even though they had been in the rain and like, it was the best thing I've ever eaten, the best thing I've ever tasted. I can confidently say that, even though I've had amazing other food, I've never cried over just eating other food. And it was like the end of Ratatouille times 1,000, basically. So I want to go back there and have that again because it was really good. If you're in New York or if you're in West Hollywood, go to Ippudo Ramen. Everything is great. Definitely try the veggie buns. I'm sure that the actual, because that's a vegetarian option, the regular ones just have pork in them. I'm sure that's amazing too. I wouldn't know. The veggie ones, oh my God. Especially because when you don't eat meat, sometimes the vegetarian option is usually like, oh yeah, here, it's an afterthought that's on the menu so you don't die of starvation while you're here. It's like that kind of a thing. This was not that. This was absolutely life-changing. And if you do try it, I would like to know what you think about it. So if anyone's listening to this and they try that, let me know. Or if you have tried it, let me know. And if you have any thoughts or anything you want to submit, even though this is this season's only dedicated Q&A episode, I'm always happy to include comments and feedback in any episode. So of course you can submit written, video, or voice messages to tom@enthusiasmproject.com, or you can just go to himynameistom.com and right at the front there, just do the little speak pipe click, and then you can submit your stuff. Wow. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. This was probably the longest Q&A episode we've ever had, and that's super cool. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you for listening. I hope you had as much fun as I did, because it's all about having fun, right? and enjoying these things. And with that being said, I hope you have a safe, happy, healthy, fun rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Oh, wait. The buck stops here.